Welcome to the webinar series on planning for community food systems in the Global South, hosted by the University at Buffalo, the State University of New York. This webinar series is made possible due to the generosity of a vast network of partners, including food system stakeholders, civil society partners, faculty and student partners, and local governments in multiple countries, including Ghana, Jamaica, and India. Many of you have worked hard to make this webinar series accessible in your own communities. Thank you all for your time. This webinar series would not be possible without the generous support of the Community of Global Health Equity, a university-wide center at the University at Buffalo, and the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. The purpose of this webinar series is to share information about the crucial role of community food systems for health and well-being, and to discuss how community food systems can be strengthened across the Global South. The webinar series draws on research co-produced with community partners in 3 countries, Ghana, Jamaica, and India. During the webinar, we will discuss the many opportunities for creating healthy, sustainable, and equitable community food systems. We will share challenges that are being reported by community food system actors and highlight innovations in building community food systems, that innovation that is often led by civil society actors. The webinar will explore how local governments can work in partnership with civil society actors to create better and improved food systems. Although we welcome everyone on the webinar series, our first priority is to share back information with the communities who are generous in sharing their knowledge with us. Therefore, the webinar series is designed for our partners in the communities of Accra, Ghana, Khorda District, India, Thiruvananthapuram, India, and Clarendon, Jamaica. The series includes 5 individual webinars. Today we will kick off with an introductory webinar. Because community food systems depend on their ecological, social, and policy contexts, the next 3 webinars will dive into 4 cases from 3 different countries. The last webinar will chart a way forward for strengthening community food systems. Each of these 5 webinars includes a pre-recorded video followed by a live interaction via WebEx. During the WebEx portion, participants will have an opportunity to ask questions and share their ideas with presenters and co-authors. The video recorded portion of the webinar is presented by 5 speakers: myself, Samina Raja, Aaron Sweeney, Eli Mui, Emmanuel Frimpong Boama, and Amani Ashimo. Additional co-authors and facilitators will be available through WebEx to respond to questions and to share additional thoughts. Your first webinar is being presented by Samina Raja, that is me. I direct the Food Systems Planning and Healthy Communities Lab at the University at Buffalo, the State University of New York, where I am also a professor of urban and regional planning and the Associate Dean for Research and Inclusive Excellence. In the webinar today, I will present 3 parts. First, I'll provide general information on community food systems, what they are, how they matter for a place, and then share a bit about the role of local government in food systems. Following this basic contextual information, I will share the approach our team used for the research initiative that led to this webinar. Finally, I will conclude by offering high-level, broad highlights to set the stage for the subsequent webinars. Let me begin with first describing bringing us on the same page in terms of what is a community food system and how local governments might be involved in it. It is no surprise that food is a central part of our life. It is essential for our sustenance and for our health. It is a marker of people's culture and identity. And of course, food is a source of much joy for all of us. Food comes to people via a rich and complex web or a community's food system. The term community food system is simply a shorthand way of describing the infrastructure that enables food to travel from its source, such as a farm, to the plate of a resident. Communities' food systems encompass a complex set of interlinked activities that enable the production, aggregation, processing, wholesale, and retail of food, as well as the acquisition, preparation, and consumption of food by people. The complex relationship that is embedded in a community food system is illustrated in the diagram on the right side of the slide. Each of the hexagons shown in the diagram indicate the specific sector from food production to food aggregation to food retail to food processing and food consumption. In addition to providing food and nutrition, community food systems are responsible for a variety of important outcomes. Food systems are a source of jobs. People work in the food system as farmers, as farm workers, as food processors, as truck drivers, as informal street vendors, restaurant workers, etc. Not surprisingly, food systems are a source of income and drive the economy. Food systems also impact ecological health, such as through the use of water and energy throughout the system, or through the reduction, recovery, and reuse of lost or wasted food. It is a soil-to-soil system. A community food system relies on a variety of input factors, including the availability of natural, financial, and material resources. It depends on access to information and technology, and last but not the least, it depends on enabling policy landscapes. In a well-functioning community food system, the different sectors, production, processing, distribution, and consumption of food, as well as the management of food-related waste, are organized to enhance the ecological, economic, social, and nutritional health of a particular place and its inhabitants. A well-functioning community food system is fair and just for all stakeholders, including farmers, farm workers, and eaters who are involved in its governance. All the community food systems are a key infrastructure in our communities. They are sometimes invisible. They are invisible sometimes to people. They are sometimes invisible to policymakers. Fortunately, a growing number of individuals, organizations, and agencies have begun to realize the crucial role that community food systems play in cities and regions. Civil society organizations across the globe, for example, have undertaken a number of actions to strengthen local food systems, including in Kerala, Odisha, and Accra. In turn, local governments have begun to recognize the key role of food systems in the health and well-being of settlements. We explore this role of local governments next, focusing especially on how urban, rural, and regional planners impact food systems. Local governments are charged with ensuring the welfare of inhabitants. Local governments aspire to make sure that places they are responsible for work for the residents that live there. Side note, we use the term local government quite broadly to include all forms of sub-state governments. The role of local governments is a bit complicated to unpack, especially because it varies considerably across the globe. Even across the 3 countries that we talk about in this webinar series, their role varies quite widely. Planning may include spatial planning, town planning, urban and regional planning, city planning, and/or rural planning. Irrespective of the title or the sort of job function planners have or local government representatives have, they definitely aspire to make places habitable for present and future generations. Traditionally, however, planners have focused on areas such as land use, transportation, housing, economic development, and so forth. But of course, in communities, even when you are thinking about land use, transportation, housing, etc., food is never far away. If you look at the slide, the food system, in fact, is peppered through our landscapes. And whether they know it or not, planners play a key role in a community's food system. Planners' decisions, whether it is tied to land use planning or transportation, impacts how well a community's food system works. For example, land use planning decisions directly influence where agriculture and food production can occur within the boundaries of a local government jurisdiction. By way of a second example, local government action related to housing has an indirect influence on people's experience within the food system. For example, in a jurisdiction where housing supply is limited or unaffordable, residents will make difficult trade-offs. People will likely skimp on meals or make do in order to meet housing costs. Public decision to invest in affordable housing, therefore, will indirectly increase residents' ability to purchase, prepare, and eat food. A third example has to do with transportation infrastructure provided by local governments. Poor quality or non-existent roads, for example, negatively impact the reach of locally grown produce to markets. The fourth and final example has to do with how local governments regulate street vendors. Street vendors, in all the cases that we will talk about, are crucial in providing access to fresh foods in many neighborhoods. Lack of support for healthy street vending, such as through excessive ordinances or laws or bylaws, can disrupt community food systems. In short, many local government actions are likely to directly or indirectly impact how well a community food system works. Viewing and investing in the food system as a public infrastructure leads to multiple benefits, as noted earlier. Indeed, many local governments around the globe are working in close partnership with their civil society actors and other partners to invest in their communities' food systems. Belo Horizonte, Brazil, Cape Town, South Africa, Lima, Peru, Mexico City, Mexico, Quito, Ecuador, Nairobi, Kenya. These are a few cities from across the globe where local governments and their community partners are working closely together to rebuild food systems. Local governments and their partners are ensuring provision of public lands for urban agriculture. They are establishing community kitchens. They are providing support for composting of food waste. They are writing and implementing plans and policies for sustainable agriculture and food systems. In short, local governments are attending to food as a public infrastructure, not only to promote food security, but also to alleviate poverty and push for economic prosperity. Now that we have some basics out of the way and we have covered the basic idea behind a community food system and how local governments connect with community food systems, I will transition into describing the goal for the research project that led to this webinar. Our aim was to document innovations, challenges, and inequities in food systems. We also aim to map the local government policy and planning landscape within which food systems function. Working with our partners, we aim to identify opportunities for strengthening community food systems through planning and policy. And finally, this allowed us to develop a framework for planning for community food systems in the Global South. I will next share the approach we used to achieve this goal. Our approach was two-pronged. First, we conducted a global scan of local government policies focused on food systems. This allowed us to understand what was going on across the globe, focusing especially on the Global South. Much of that work is available in a free searchable database that anybody is welcome to use and download examples of how communities are rebuilding their food systems using local government policy. Our second approach was to conduct a deep dive into 4 qualitative cases to explore innovations, challenges, inequities, and opportunities in 4 locations in 3 countries, Jamaica, Ghana, and India. In the case studies, we centered our inquiry around the daily living practices, or DLPs as we call them, of households of smallholder farmers. We chose this methodological approach because these households understand both the experience of at-risk growers and at-risk consumers. Smallholder farmers are also very familiar with the ways in which the food supply chain works or fails. Smallholder farmers are also at the front end of adapting to external forces, as well as working in the face of resource constraints. Viewing the food system through their lens allows us to see how well a community's food system works or not. In the very same settings, we also assessed how local government planning landscape strengthens or hinders food systems. In each of our case study locations, we conducted semi-structured interviews, each interview containing about 60 questions. Interviews lasted anywhere between 2 and 4 hours and were conducted with the generous support of in-community experts and partners. Interviews with farmers were conducted on their farms, where the team also had the pleasure of watching and learning from farmers in action. And of course, on many occasions, we were fortunate to enjoy the fruits of their labor. Over 100 interviews were conducted across the 3 countries, which were transcribed, coded, and studied for themes that you will hear about through this webinar series. I will mostly focus on general insights. Although I will share some general insights from these interviews and observations from the 3 countries, greater details about each case are forthcoming in the next webinar. I will begin by first talking about innovations. First, innovations in community food systems are unfolding in all the settings that we observed, from Accra in Ghana, Clarendon in Jamaica, Khordha in Odisha, and Thiruvananthapuram in Kerala. These innovations, which are unfolding in the face of significant constraints, are often led by civil society actors, not-for-profit organizations, and cooperatives. In Thiruvananthapuram, for example, a farmer-led cooperative operates an impressive farm-to-retail operation in a rapidly urbanizing district. The picture on the right side of the slide, in fact, shows a retail store where customers in the neighborhood can buy fresh local produce, and farmers are paid cash at the time of delivery. In the same city, Thanal, a civil society organization, operates a market where local growers sell organic produce that is accessible to residents in the neighborhood. In a different part of India, Khordha, Odisha, Ordinary, informal, but daily commitment to sustainability is routine behavior for smallholder farmers. But of course, these innovations are unfolding in the face of considerable challenges. I will turn to these challenges next. First and foremost, urbanization, or should we say unplanned urbanization, is putting community food systems at great risk in all the case sites. Tenuous land tenure for smallholder farmers exacerbates this risk, especially in places such as Accra, Ghana, where multiple land governance systems coexist. In all cases, smallholder farmers are bearing the brunt of climate change, facing crop failures and losses in the face of extreme weather events. A rapidly globalizing food system does not help the situation. In fact, smallholder farmers, local producers, are competing with the arrival of food, subsidized food from the global industrial food supply chain, a competition in which the odds are stacked against smallholder farmers. Not surprisingly, there is a growing disconnect between local growers, processors, retailers, and consumers, even when there is opportunity for a thriving community food system. Last but not the least, a layered local government planning and policy structure makes planning for a healthy, sustainable, and equitable food system challenging. This brings me to the concluding slide of the webinar. Given the innovations and given the challenges, what is the local government policy response? In general, across the 4 cases, and frankly, across the world, local government planning and policy is behind. In our cases, local government policy is relatively silent in its treatment of community food systems. When local government plans and policies do explicitly tackle food systems, they do so by focusing on one sector of the food system, either agriculture or processing. Very rarely do local governments recognize the collective impact that food systems can bring, not only for nutrition, but also for retaining the rupee or the dollar within their economy. A systemic view is not clearly discernible in local government policy. This is, of course, a missed opportunity because in all 4 cases, food systems offers a considerable opportunity for broader social, economic, and ecological transformation. The good news is that innovation seems to be percolating into policy circles. And indeed, the charge is led by a handful of local governments that are strengthening food systems in their communities. This is true, for example, in the case of Thiruvananthapuram, Kerala, where local government is implementing programs to strengthen urban agriculture, for example. We hope that this webinar, the entire series, will serve as a call to action for more and more local governments to lend their support in creating and sustaining healthier and sustainable community food systems. With this, I bring this webinar to a close. I thank you for your attention.